Peace family, peace family. Chef Joseph the Entrepreneur back at you again with another video. Chef Joseph the Entrepreneur back at you again with another video. Welcome back to the channel. Man, a little stopped up today actually. I was kind of under the weather slightly, which I don't really get sick, but I was not feeling the greatest, I guess, with the air and the weather changing. Plus a lot of the pollen is in the air. So I didn't put up a video. So I'm back again today. Glad y'all can tune in, like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so upon meditation, I have come to a subject for today. And many of you may find this to be true in your own lives. Sometimes you have to go at it all alone. Sometimes you have to go at it all alone. Sometimes you have to go at it all alone. Or you can say sometimes you have to walk alone. Yeah, that's going to be the subject for today. You know, I found, I found as an entrepreneur, when I look at how far I've climbed, you know, that you believe in people, you want the best for people, etc. You want the best for people and you want to, you want the best for them. But somehow there is an unspoken or unseen jealousy that tends to creep in the air. Well, how can you say that, Chef? Because, nobody said nothing to you. What you fail to realize is that 85 to 90%, 80 to 95% of communication is nonverbal. So you can speak without speaking, My grandmother always said, if you want to know something about someone, if you want to know if they're telling the truth, just look at them straight in the face. That'll tell you everything. But sometimes you have to go at things all alone. As you start to climb, and you have ambition in your life, you have things that you're trying to accomplish with your life. Sometimes those who are beside you don't want to see you rise. I've seen situations where you tell someone something and it's like they act like they don't even hear it. It's like you literally have to come down from 12th grade to go back down to 5th grade type of thing. Not knocking the 5th graders, but I mean, if you at a certain level as a man or as a woman, you should have had some type of developmental something going on within yourself, and I say that respectfully. It's not casting shade on anyone and where they are. But what I see is that people want money. They want the best. They want to eat. They want to do this. They want the best. But when it comes down to it, it's like sometimes you just be better off doing it by yourself. There was a situation just yesterday where some guys had worked with me, everybody got paid, whatever. And it was like, oh yeah, I'm coming tomorrow, Chef, I'm coming tomorrow. But then as soon as they get that money, the next day, look you straight in the face, don't even budge. Don't even come to say, hey, I read it. You read it? Nothing. And you just say to yourself, you know what? I can do this all by myself. And that's what some people fail to realize is that when you have built yourself from the bottom, you don't need anyone. It's nice to have someone in your life. Yes, it is. It's nice to have some help, to help build. But unfortunately, from what I see, and I'm not speaking for all people, but from what I see, a lot of these grown adults, man, just don't want it. I said a lot. I didn't say all. And it's like you're better off just doing it yourself. I had a project that I was working on, and technically I could have did it by myself. Yeah, 2 hands or 4 hands would have been better than 2. But when you look at the procrastination, when you look at the laziness, when you look at having to chase someone down to put money in their pocket, I'm not saying that's what I've done. I've done that in the past, actually. But it's like, why even, if they want the job, they need to be calling you for the job. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's just better for you just to go at it all alone, by yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's less headache, it's less stress. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got to worry about nobody talking back. You ain't got to worry about none of that. You just knock it out and do it yourself. Um, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was just saying how, he knows a guy that was that had a whole dental practice, and he can't find help. See what I'm saying? He had to close his whole practice down and just basically do it by himself if he can, which I know that's probably going to be hard because, scheduling and all that kind of stuff, x-rays and all that, but he had to close his whole practice behind just, he can't do it by himself. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he could if he really needed to, but golly, that'd been a whole lot of work. But I just find in life, sometimes you just be better off going by yourself to do it. At least you know that you know how to put things together. You know what your project or your product's supposed to look like. And you don't have to depend on grown people who don't, some that is, who seem to not want, a better life for themselves. And why do I say that? Because I have been in this game for years, and I can really sum it up. I've had some really good people that have walked beside and, that have walked beside the craft and done very well, but then at the end of the day, I've seen quite a few who say they want the opportunity, but they're not willing to put in the work to make it happen. So it's like, man, look, I ain't even got to deal with this. Literally, I can just do this by myself, and I tell you what, it's a peace of mind, you know. So to those of you who may find yourself, just looking around yourself and you're like, I would like to have some help, but I just simply can't find anyone. Sometimes it's best just to go and do it all by yourself. It may take a little bit more time, but at least it's going to be done and it's going to be done correctly. But that is what I've seen in today's society. Yeah, and a lot of times people see where you're going and then they'll try to knock you off your pedestal type of thing. Not that you're holding yourself up high, you're just trying to make some things happen for yourself. And you just be better off doing it by yourself, you know. But yeah, so if you find yourself in that situation, to cut all the stress and anxiety out, sometimes it's best to do it by yourself. I know we have went through a lot of people who literally, they just there for a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? I've seen that in times past where they don't want to do the work, nor do they want to learn it. Like you literally have to spoon feed adults. Some adults, that is. So I'm not saying this is casting shade, but if you're paying someone to do a job, they have to have some level of initiative to basically learn the craft, to learn what they need to learn so they can get paid. Not so easy in today's society. Like, they want the check and they own the clock, but yet you got to tell the same person like 20 times type of stuff. It's like, man, do you even want the job or you don't? You just here to take up space? No, you just there to get that check. But I've seen that before as well. But sometimes you just got to go by yourself, And I know most of my life, that's how it's been. I'm the only child. And so I know what it's like to play in the sandbox by myself. At least I ain't got to worry about nothing talking back to me. I can make it happen. You know what I'm saying? Totally self-sufficient. And I suggest that to you as well. I think that is one of the main reasons that our community cannot, that a lot of communities, but especially the melanated community, they cannot build because you got to do things by yourself. Or they want what you got and just jump all the way to the top of the ladder and like they belong at the top. But wait a minute, you're talking to somebody that's got 13 years, 15, 16 years in the game here. You don't just get a chance to come in and ask questions, just jump to where that person is. That's unheard of. And you haven't earned your stripes. You haven't put skin in the game or anything. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, if you find yourself, excuse me, if you find yourself, having to repeat yourself over and over and over, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a business partner, whether it's just whatever it is, sometimes it might be better just to do it by yourself. At least you're saving money, you know. At least you're saving money. You don't have to pay nobody to do nothing that you can do for yourself. But the downside to that is that you're only going to go but so far. But but from my eyes, looking at today's society, you know, it's almost better to do it by yourself. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's very few and far between out here. You know what I'm saying? Who really share the same interests, who share the same common goals, who shares that same level of honesty and trust that you have. It's very hard to find. And I've heard every story in the book. And you know what's so sad? They'll take your story, when they didn't level up, they'll take and spread your name like you did something to them, when in reality is you didn't do anything to them. They was just there to get a quick dollar and don't want to do the work in the process. So in other words, you find yourself doing the work you're supposed to pay them for. It's best to go all alone. It's just best do it by yourself, straight up. And this why we as a community, we tend to fail over and over and over again, because a lot of us just don't want to stick together. Just don't want to stick together, But I'm going to tell you something. It'll come back to bite you in the end. It will. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing, But like I said, this is not any type of attack on anyone in particular. But I can tell you that what I've seen as an entrepreneur, as a melanated entrepreneur on top of that, yeah. And those of you who can identify with this conversation, y'all know exactly what I'm saying. It's just very unfortunate. And sometimes you find yourself doing it better by yourself. Changing gears slightly, I definitely pivoted and made a very good decision for myself. I had been in this particular space of the restaurant industry, and built something successful, and chose to step back, really because you can do it by yourself. In today's society, it's hard to find people that want to work. If they work, it's just there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, or just whatever the case may be. And then you look at yourself, it's like, man, I could do this whole thing by myself. Literally, I personally can run a restaurant all by myself. I'm talking about orders, cooking, and everything. And what I had found, the turnover rate, it wasn't because of anything that we had done on our side. It was because a lot of folks just not leveling up. You put time into training someone, what I'm saying, which takes weeks, and then, you training them, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you get papers in the mail, they got somebody looking for them, or the authorities or whatever, they quit the job. And it's like, now you got to go find someone else and do the same rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And when you really look at that, how much time you put into that, when you do the math, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Luckily for me, I know how to pivot. I already have other irons in the fire anyway, not to mention moving into film. He came during the Civil War.com. That is the Chef Joseph story. www.hecameduringthecivilwar.com. And so you can actually sponsor. If you want to be a film sponsor, you can go there. You can check that out. But yeah, I'll be working on those releases, and just a lot of things happening with that. And I'll keep you updated. But he came during the civilwar.com. And I will talk to you more about my whole story, because that was a situation where my second great grandfather was a chef in the Civil War in 1859. And so, and how our destinies came together 166 plus years later. But I can just tell you, what I find, it may be a little tough, absolutely. Especially when you see other people groups coming into this country and they're making things happen. See what I'm saying? I'm sure they may have their quarrels, but at least they're working together. But in our community, unfortunately, and I'm going to call it like I see it, the jealousy is deep. The hatred for one another is deep. The looks of who they think they is, because they get together, and we find fault in every freaking thing. If you don't have a salt shaker, somebody gonna complain. If you do got a salt shaker, somebody gonna complain. You know what I'm saying? It's like, excuse me. And it's just very unfortunate things you go through just dealing with your own people. and it's a real conversation. And you know, I'm a real person, so I don't bite my tongue when it comes to these things. I mean, it's really the truth. And but at the end of the day, to those of y'all who know and know what has happened, not saying nothing bad has happened, but really those who are just were not there for good intent, who want to challenge you. I mean, it's like, look, I don't even need you here. Hit the door. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, for real, because you're not gonna be challenging authority and going to back talk and stuff. I mean, we're talking about a simple assignment here. You know what I'm saying? Things that you should do. When you go to work, they ask you to sweep a floor, you sweep the floor. It doesn't matter how you feel. I mean, they're paying you to do a job. And if you don't feel good or feel fine that day, then call out, whatever the case may be. You know, and I just find it better from mental health and mental clarity. Sometimes you just do things by yourself. You know what I'm saying? You know, it may look kind of strange because people be like, oh, you know, they working by themselves. Well, a lot of times that we work by ourselves, it won't because of anything that we done. It's because people don't. A lot of people just don't want to work. It's the generation that we're in. You know, they swear up and down God gave them the job and Jesus gave me the job. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving me a chance. 2 weeks, they quit. You know what I'm saying? So it's just best to do it all alone. But you know what's so sad? When they see you pulling up in new cars, they see you pulling up in your, you know, you doing your thing, then they got a nerve to tune their face up and, you know what I'm saying, like you did something to them. Very sad, very sad. So anyway, I'm gonna let y'all go on that. Y'all hear my voice is a little scratchy. Like I said, I didn't put up a video because I was just trying to get better. This morning, I did some therapeutic work and steam room and stuff like that, you know, to help clear my lungs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just the pollen and stuff like that. So, but thanks for watching and tuning into the channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Chef Joseph the Entrepreneur, back at you again, okay? Have a good one. Peace.